You like comics? You bet we do. How about artwork? Yeah, we fucking love that too. You like movies? Whether they are old or new. How about streaming? We watch that fucking shit, it's true. But it's comic book art that gets us all fired up for the all-time great. So let's buckle up. Hear me out, I'ma tell you how it all goes down on the Blacklist Underground.
Welcome to the Blacklist Underground, brought to you by Ideal Organic CBD, starring our favorite artist, Zach Howard. Hi, Zach.
Hello. I'll just hit everything.
Zach is creator of the hit series Wild Blue Yonder, as well as illustrator of The Cape, Hellboy, Judge Dredd, TMNT, and too many others to mention. I am your host.
Well said.
Enthusiastic comic book aficionado J.C. Washburn. And each episode we choose a comics legend to ink a drawing of. And this week's giant who's getting blacklisted is none other than industry underground icon Richard Corben.
Oh, yay! Yeah, Richard Corben with it looks like you glued my leg onto this.
Yeah. Well, you know, you were the recipient of Corben sloppy seconds, so I thought this way we could kind of reverse that.
Yeah. Well, don't be jealous.
Zach, hit us up with our Patreon blacklisters this week if you can.
I can't.
All right.
So we'll do a little thingy at the end for everybody. It hasn't changed, so we'll cut and paste, and next week we'll go live again. But I gotta fire Clara for not forcing that on me.
Oh, she's a filthy animal. That there.
Yes.
So I did a bunch of reading about Corben. I mean, of course I knew him. He's an industry legend, and he's won, industry awards, and he's had all kinds of acclaim and influence. But this was the first time I've ever actually read any interviews with the guy.
Yeah.
What a total trip he was.
Awesome. I don't know if I've ever read. I remember when Hellboy was coming out, I read whatever was on the news sites, but I don't think I've ever read an interview with him unless I was too young to remember.
Well, the funny thing is his fame was in the 70s.
His biggest run, right?
Well, the 70s and 80s, early 80s. And so a lot of his interviews are transcribed from the 80s. So he's being interviewed during like the Reagan administration. I'm reading these old Corben interviews when Reagan was president, and
his thoughts on heavy metal and Henry Kissinger.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're obsessed with the fact, and you forget because it's 2021 now. still coughing. I apologize. It's that California smoke. But people forget, if you read those old interviews, all of the interviewers are completely obsessed with the fact that he drew all of his characters with massive tits and cocks, and everybody was muscular, and it was like Frazetta on steroids.
Yeah, go big.
I mean, you kind of forget that. Like I'm looking back to the first time I ever saw Corben, I think I picked up something off of the shelf at the comic book shop in the 80s. I was going, with the first comic book shop I ever shopped at.
Yeah.
And there was a Den comic probably sitting there. And I was like, well, that looks pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, that was his first big thing, if I remember. Or I don't know if it was his first big thing, but I remember that as a young kid, obviously. Yeah.
You and I were both, shopping, we're on shopping around the same time. And I picked up a Corben, and of course the art was instantly attracted me. I mean, the colors were extremely vibrant. He did all of his own. He had a very obscure kind of way of doing his colors back then. Color separations. That's why everything he did was so bright and painterly.
It really was. He'd use like vibrant purples and stuff, for like trees, and it was really cool.
He was the first guy in comic books to draw like big bouncing breasts. That was his hallmark. And,
it was, and just giant, all of his characters. He was, if I remember correctly, I think he was kind of an amateur bodybuilder.
He was.
Yeah, and you can tell because even the women just have this brilliant musculature that, or just how they're constructed. It's everything's pushed out a little Frazetta-ish, but he's definitely his own thing. Obviously, he's in his own world once you start studying his work.
Well, he actually has a quote that's a little bit Frazetta-esque here.
Yeah.
He says in one of these, this is an interview, I think, from the 80s. He says, if you see a person with a long nose, I'll draw him with a slightly longer nose to emphasize it. If a hero is muscular, I'll make him more muscular. I emphasize things that attract me or the essence of them. I see things vividly, and that's the way I make them. In literature, people may get different images from reading the same story, but in a comic story, it's concrete. That's the way it is. And he did. I mean, I even when he did the Macoma story, which I believe preceded the Crooked Man with Mike. I believe so.
I think I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. You're the Hellboy lore guy.
I might be. It doesn't matter. Either way, it was in the same general phase of his career. But there's that scene where he shows up in the African girl's tent.
Yeah.
And she becomes, she was an old lady and all this stuff, and she becomes this nubile, beautiful black princess.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when I first saw him, I was living in Germany, and you got heavy metal on the racks, and they're often risque, but they're never covered up.
Right.
Even on the like little military shopettes and stuff. So when I was there to get my Conan magazine, obviously I picked up heavy metal as well.
Yeah.
And since childhood, he's kind of, I mean, in a world of or industry of people trying to kind of outdo each other in mimicry and kind of chase the dragon of fame, success, fighting over the few shekels that are left. I don't know. He just stands out to me as a true original. He doesn't really look like anyone. He doesn't feel like anyone. His storytelling, he was true to whatever was in his noggin there, which is more than most artists can ever claim.
Well, he actually did a stint in animation, which I didn't know. And as our friend Steve Rude says, the greatest comic book artists are either former animators or have studied animation.
Yeah.
And I agree. His storytelling is flawless.
It's pretty damn solid, huh?
It's really solid. It's the kind of storytelling that I like. It's very simple, and it tells the story the right way. I mean,
the right way, the JC way, the big titty way, as he would say.
Yeah, it's just not. There's, it's strange. He mentions Toth as an influence, which
interesting.
But the one I was impressed with myself.
The simple paneling, I could see Toth.
Yeah,
a little bit there. So, anyways, sorry to interrupt.
But the thing that sort of interested me when he was talking about his influences, because there's a couple of phases of Corben. You've got the stuff, the painterly stuff that he was doing early in his career.
Like in the 70s with like naked women in the woods type stuff.
Yeah. And like he did, the Bat Out of Hell cover.
Meatloaf.
For Meatloaf. I mean, that's all almost like Frazetta-esque painterly stuff. But then, when it started getting into the 90s and he was doing like the Cage, that started working for Marvel, he was doing some Hulk stuff, he was doing some Luke Cage stuff. He ended up doing obviously some work with Mike and Hellboy. And then he in a sense, I want to say
he did that Batman Black and White too, which came from nowhere. That's like great. Batman fighting in the alley. That was great.
That was really good.
Yeah.
But I don't mean this in any way to be insulting to him, but he downshifted a little bit from what he had been doing, and I noticed as you mentioned earlier, he sort of got it. It was really the stippling stuff. He had reduced, all the chrome stuff that he was kind of, as Byrne used to put it, he was the chrome guy. He goes, yeah, Corben, isn't he the chrome guy? Does all the chrome. And
yeah, and I think a lot of that obviously people evolved, but a lot of that I think just became from age. And I mean, when you're stippling all the time, and I'll try some I mean, shit, I haven't done it since college. If then, maybe not since high school, but it's very energy intensive, labor intensive. And as you age, you even saw people like Al Williamson, they just have to pull back. Al Williamson got scritchy and he just started getting real sketchy with a nib. He's really good at it. Look at his work on like over Leonardi and stuff like that. Yep. However, Corben's style's really kind of, I lack the correct superlatives sometimes because it's stiff, but it's so elegant too and well formed and well designed. It's really lovely to look at, which is they just don't seem congruent, those two things at the same time. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. The placement of his blacks, and when he did draw muscles, they're just so, I mean, I lack words, not trying to get you hot and bothered, but they're supple but still strong, and they feel dense and powerful, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, it again, and where most people rip other people off, he just kind of seemed to invent his own language, and it worked.
I was kind of surprised, but I was sort of impressed with myself because I was trying to think of an artist to compare his later work to, like where I don't want to necessarily say he downshifted, but where he wasn't going
to pull back the throttle, man. You're getting old. You've been doing the same thing for 40 years, 60 years. I think artists, they just run out of gas, and it's not that they aren't producing good work. They just have to approach it a different way, because it's like an aging athlete. You're not just taking it to the bucket each play and sticking your crotch in a dude's face for a poster. You're passing the ball off and learning to fade away a little bit, right?
Well, it's like Bernie Wrightson, I mean, his Batman stuff, his Batman series and the stuff that he did for DC later on, into the 80s, those prestige series he was doing, those didn't look anything like, his stuff that he was doing on Frankenstein or doing.
He spent forever on each image, where, so every artist is different, but, I think it's ubiquitous with an aging artist, to just lighten up a little bit so they can, I don't know, it could be just a physical ability thing mixed with life and time and just trying to get more ideas out before you have a complete lack of ability to do it anymore.
Well, how they say that the human body only has a finite number of heartbeats.
Yes.
And the same for insects, same for, all different kinds of it. Maybe a comic book artist has a finite number of lines.
I'm fucked. Am I dying tomorrow? Damn it, JC.
but that was when I was in my mind, when I was sort of searching for a comparable artist with a comparable line approach. I thought the first guy that came into my head was John Severin.
Oh, interesting.
I thought to myself, Severin had kind of a deadline and did a lot with shadows, and like pretty much, especially like when he used to ink Herb Trimpe on Hulk.
Yes.
Like everything was the same, like had the same texture.
Pretty much. It was a monthly style for certain.
Yeah, and I liked Severin. I mean, I enjoyed his comics.
Grew up with him, yeah.
It was a little bit kind of like in the same way that Russ Heath, it was a little antiseptic to me. But I loved Severin. I would pick up his comics and loved anything that he inked too.
I agree.
But the same, I mean, Corben stylistically, and I'll be damned if I didn't read an interview and he listed Severin as an influence.
Oh wow, interesting.
So because
I would figure them about the same age, but maybe I'm off by a generation there.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering to myself, is Severin still alive? I don't even know.
I don't know. I guess we should fact check. But I think the show should have a standard. Everyone's dead until proven otherwise.
The late John Severin, respected great artist, And and another thing, he was into karate.
Oh, cool.
He wasn't just a
Like
bodybuilder.
point karate, Shotokan. What's up?
He wasn't clear about that. I think it was so long ago that he just walked into a building that said karate on the front.
Oh, okay.
He got into karate in his 30s.
Cool.
And so he was, he was competing against obviously younger guys at that point.
Cut to him just kicking kids in the mouth. It's a point. It's a point, Johnny.
He was kicking the shit out of Danny LaRusso.
Sweep the leg.
He was sweeping the leg of small children.
Strike first, strike fast, no mercy, sir. And he's just beating kids. Like he has the yellow belt on with the kids in the class and stuff like that, kicking them through windows. Yeah. You got to read this guy's interviews. Yeah.
I think you'd be surprised. Like it doesn't surprise me that that Mike thought that you were a good fit to do the sequel to his story.
Why did he say that? Philosophically, or just we're both good looking?
Well, he was a very handsome guy, and but he says he has you. I think you would find him to be sort of an artistic brother.
He's punk rock enough.
Oh, big time.
Oh, I mean, good.
He wasn't loud punk rock. He was quiet punk rock.
Cool. So like Ian McKay type thing, Fugazi.
Yeah, very, very soft spoken guy.
Just gonna do his own thing.
He was soft spoken, but like would talk very quietly about imagining murdering people. You know what I mean?
Uh-oh. Did my screen? There we go. Right when I look over, my screen was frozen. I hope it wasn't frozen for a while.
But he may have had the same qualms about coloring that you did, because he worked obviously on. If
it's not Nelson Daniel, you can go fuck yourself in the butt. This is a giant fist.
This is an interview from 2018. He says, "I was working for Marvel when the opportunity to work with Mignola just happened one day. It took me about 2 seconds to decide and accept. I feel Mignola is one of the top writer artists working in comics. I knew I could learn a lot from his great talent, and it was a great pleasure drawing his stories. They consisted of an action synopsis rather than a complete script. He would add the final text after I'd completed the art." Was that similar to your experience?
Yeah, Mike, it was in and out of like prose and thoughts and contradictions to himself. And, but in the same token, it was brilliant. It was like no script I'd ever seen. It's almost like his stories meander along, and but they just find their home in the end.
Yeah,
again and again and again and again. It like breaks the rules. So in that aspect, it was the most interesting experience, I would say, as far as working with a writer that I don't have a more intimate relationship with. His scripts are like no other I've ever seen. They're both visual. He'll have dialogue here, no dialogue there. He didn't care, or at least I didn't perceive him caring if I changed panels or not. I mean, he was only heavy-handed once in the entire book, where he thumbed out a page along with the script. But Mike's hilarious. I mean, he writes a brilliant story, but spells the name of his character wrong the entire script. I mean, it's the most interesting script you've ever read. It's like gunslingers. They're not really taking aim. They're just shooting, and for some reason, every time it hits the damn bullseye. Mike's brilliant that way, so I could see why if Corben's a little bit punk rock plus has the storytelling disease that all the greats do, or at least that I appreciate do. I can see him really liking that, because it's just so. Mike's very esoteric in his approach, and you just kind of, like a jazz musician, you kind of work in with it, which is really exciting for people, I think, that get bored with normal kind of the factory setting of comic books.
Well, that's why when he first started drawing Hellboy stories, I was really pumped because I could never really crack his stories, when I was young. I'd open them up. I remember the first time I opened up one of his comic books at the comic book shop. And you remember how his lettering was always typewritten?
Yeah. It was disconcerting almost, even as a kid to me.
Same here. I couldn't get past it. I'm like, what? Why are these comic books? Why is this lettering typewritten? This isn't a comic book. Comic books have handwriting. Of course, now everything's done by computer. Yeah. Most of it. But so you know how I feel about how I rank in my heart. I rank artists based on the stories that they've drawn and how those stories impact me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
I like it.
And I love Garcia Lopez. I love him. He's so good. It almost hurts to look at his artwork. But there's never been the Garcia Lopez story that shot an arrow through my heart. You know what I mean? I've never. I mean, he just never got that lucky script, and it was cool that one of the artists that I really liked, Corben, walked into a couple of really cool Mike Mignola scripts, and all of a sudden now I've got these two comic books that I can just hold to my chest and love.
Yeah, and that's so important as a creator. You could be the best studio musician on planet Earth and no one will ever know your name. But you could just do one hit wonder that catches fire and everybody will know your name forever,
It's something.
It's the serendipity of life, especially as an artist, is both cruel and wonderful and brilliant. And, it's just a confluence of all these ocean of ingredients that you have partial control of and then no control of, so my take on Hellboy is a perfect example of that. I brought my own stink to it, but in the end, I have to bow to what Mike says. So, very interesting.
It's funny. He says the same thing. He says, following up on his Hellboy stuff, he says, there are many reasons I wanted to return to heavy metal. The freedom to write, draw, and color all of the pages myself with the help of my colorist. Also, there's a greater freedom with the subject matter because there's less concern about nudity and sexual contact at heavy metal. And I was like, holy shit, I've heard that before. That's funny. I feel like this guy would get along with Zach.
Yeah, I think Corben and I could have clanked a couple beers and chuckled. It's interesting, the different, just like styles of art, there's styles of artists, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably way different than what you were used to as far as interacting with, as far as, you're working with a lot of classic artists that probably had a lot of classical philosophies and achievements in the field. And then you meet somebody like me who's into fart jokes and takes the craft so seriously he can't enjoy a second of his life. So,
well, I have to say, Arthur Adams could give you a run for your money on the fart jokes.
Okay, Arthur, it's on, bro.
He is the king of
step off. So, anyways, So, Corben's just this interesting. I love those. Again, I like punk rock artists, man. It's just, what are you doing that's breaking the mold? Isn't that your job as an artist, to not do what other people did before you? And Corben's a perfect example of that. Finding a home within the medium, and that's so important.
And he was fully self-publishing and doing everything on his own, was so totally into the underground scene, independent comics. I mean, that was so true to his heart. He was not, he didn't draw for Marvel till he was an old man.
Yeah, when it became a novelty at that point.
Right.
Shit, I'll draw the Hulk. It's pretty cool. So, And two, you're working with known slayers, so you aren't really taking too much of a chance. You know, you're at least going to get a professional level script. You know, and you can toy around with some like childhood favorites then, like the Hulk or that was his late book, I think he did with Azzarello, right?
Yeah, he did Hulk. He did Cage.
I love that Hulk book, if I remember correctly.
There was a Bruce Jones run on Hulk too, and Corben used to work with Bruce Jones on the old, creepy and eerie stuff.
Yeah. Because that was way back in the beginning when Corben was going. He did some creepy work.
Yeah, he was fully doing horror stuff. He did the cover for one of my favorite paperbacks. It was called Bruce Jones's Twisted Tales.
Oh, I thought it was called like Bigfoot Romantic Excursion.
No,
that wasn't it.
That was the sequel to Slamming Granny in the Fanny.
Was Bigfoot still in it? Did they ruin his character?
That Bigfoot's on the cover with Granny.
Okay, cool. Like the motivation. Go. Carry on.
Oh dear, my wife's texting. My wife is FaceTiming me from Thailand.
Well, should we take a quick break?
Well, yeah. Let me just break for a second. Hold on.
Do it.
Bye. All right. Sorry about that. I gotta take what I can get.
Hey, dude, it's awesome. Your poor wife and kids are stuck in an other side of the planet and hemisphere.
They're on the other side of the planet.
Literally, just draw a line through. So,
these 1980s Corben interviews are gold, dude.
Yeah,
absolute gold.
Well, now I'm gonna have to read them because he does sound punk rock. So,
well, they ask him questions that you would never ask an artist now.
Yeah,
they're like, you draw men with big cocks. Is that homoerotic? Are you homosexual? Like they just.
Oh my god!
I mean, I'm dead serious. You've got to go back and read these interviews with the dude. I'm like, I can't believe. Like it's like he's being interviewed by Freud. I mean, I guess if you're gonna draw comic books like where everybody's running around with oversized, sex organs.
Yes,
like,
perfectly sane, perfectly normal.
People are going to ask questions, but like it's pretty wild. Like here's a good quote. Like because of course he was constantly being accused of being sexist because of his art. He was like Frazetta mixed together with who was the Penthouse publisher? I forget his name. But anyways, so Corben's
was
like,
it Penthouse or Hustler?
I don't know. Anyway,
who's the guy in the wheelchair?
I don't remember.
He was the Hustler guy that got like shot.
Yes.
Woody Harrelson played him.
He was that was such a good movie. Oh God.
So our Hustler lore is people in our generation are shaking their heads, JC.
I know it's terrible. But I actually love that guy as a free speech dude.
Protected our civil rights, man.
He sure did, absolutely. But anyway, so this is one of the quotes from these old articles. He says, "I think women who condemn my work because it's sexist haven't even read it. They just look at the pictures and say, that's sexist. Women who proclaim that men and women are the same are stupid. There is a basic difference between men and women. There is no way you can get around it. There never will be. Creating a society without the difference is completely artificial and is doomed."
Oh my gosh, that's pretty salient to today, man.
I mean, Corben dropped dead at just the right time.
Yeah, not going to get...
He's about to get canceled.
He's about to get canceled. Yeah, that wouldn't have gone over well. But, I don't know. We all have opinions, and he was drawing hyper-sexualized, as they say it, versions of the XX and XY chromosomes. So I guess speaking candid, if he felt, and I guess that's kind of the thing, if that's how you fucking feel, say it. And I think that's the responsibility of an artist. And whether you agree with that or not, obviously it's it's going to ruffle some feathers. Other people are going to probably agree with it, but not like how he said it, etc. Now, all the grays in between. However, I think it's so important for artists to speak their voice. Hopefully, it's an intelligent and thoughtful one that doesn't bring harm to others. But if you're too scared to say how you feel, how the fuck are you going to express yourself honestly as a creator or an artist? And this is a huge problem with all entertainment, but I'll just stick to comic books. Yeah. Everyone's a fucking coward, man.
Yeah.
They may not get a job. Don't say this. If you take that job, you can't get this job. If you turn me down this time, we can never work again. All the just countless little shitty politics that suck the fun out of comic books. I think it's important for a person to say how they feel. Do I think he could have said what he did say a little more politically correct? Yes, but
I think that opinion in the early 80s or whenever the interview was made was actually probably fairly progressive.
Probably, like when you read old Teddy Roosevelt stuff and you're like, yo, dude, that's some rough racial undercurrents there.
Yes.
But then you read it in context of the times. He was considered a bleeding heart liberal.
Yes.
So it's just, one, it shows you how fucked up this country's been for a while. But yeah, I don't know. I want to digress and just go back to, saying that I think it's important to also understand the context. He's trying to show they are very sexualized, and that's the point of his artwork. He's putting hypersexualized iconography in his storytelling for a reason. So does Frank Miller. What would Sin City be without the hyper noir and the girls with their butts sticking out and the guys with their teeth missing and scars on their face and it always raining? And I mean, there's tropes and themes that are used for a reason. Sometimes no more reason than, hey, the artist effing likes it, right? Yeah. And in Corben's case, it works, man. We want artists of different types. Should everybody draw like Ron Lim? I don't know. So that's my thoughts on that. Whether you agree with what he says or think he could be more nuanced or whatever the fuck, I think it comes from an honest place of being an artist and a creator expressing frustration in a form of this kind of a passive aggressive censorship. You drew a dick? What are you, gay? What are you, gay, bro? You suck dicks? You suck dick? You like dicks?
Dude, that's basically the interview. If you really,
it's like, what the fuck are you saying, dude? Leonardo da Vinci loved dicks as far as dissecting them then. And, I don't know. Who fucking cares? It's
there's a Mobius quote.
There you go. You want to see some dicks.
Well, he says, this is Mobius talking about Corben. He says, he uses the body, its sexuality in a free and beautiful way. He's not afraid to show it. He's completely free and shows sex organs as they naturally are.
Well said, Mobius.
Mobius. He goes, he may be one of the first artists to do so commercially and is certainly one of the strongest. His work is erotic, but not in the traditional way. There's a joy of sex, not hidden, but very much as it is. He uses style, but it's not over-stylized, at least not as traditional eroticism is, unless you speak in the Grecian sense. He dreams of human anatomy, very beautiful, with lots of control, and I love his personality. Nobody knows him. He's a mystery, yet through his drawings, we are very close.
Wow.
I just love French.
I'll leave it to the French to wax poetic in about drawing ding-dongs. So, yeah, dude, very, fuck yeah, Mobius.
Mobius was awesome.
I mean, that brings, what a ray of sunlight in an otherwise piss world. Guys like Mobius are, man.
I was talking to Paul Smith. I was like, what do you think? What do you hold Mobius like in the pantheon of great artists? And he was like, oh, he's like, I fucking love to look at Mobius. He goes, I could look at his drawings all day long. He goes, I have no fucking clue what his stories are about. He goes, but I sure love to look at his drawings.
Yeah, I'm flying around, and then this person's head turns into a monster, and then it can be rough following him.
A movie of that stuff. There's no plot. It's an acid trip. It
is kind of like a disconnected, though beautiful, hallucinogenic voyage you go on with Mobius.
Yeah.
But to circle back with Corben, he had this fantastical feel about his stuff that doesn't always work, but for some reason, even with his balloon muscles and his stiff characters, there's just magic found in the ingredients that you wouldn't think otherwise would be anything worth looking at. And he's perfect for, in all phases of his career, this old Hellboy stuff that's kind of a little more clunky and not as realized or refined, shall we say. There's just subtle beauty in it, I don't even know how to. It feels more painterly at this point, or almost feels like I'm inking clay right now.
Well,
like he sculpted it out of clay.
Well, if you go into if you go to his website, or if you find his photograph archives, he would build clay models of Hellboy or secondary characters, and he would even light them in his studio. Very small.
That's the old school way.
He would. So it goes back. We had a conversation one time, a long time ago, about who the best Hellboy artists are, and the best Hellboy. No, actually, it was on Drink and Draw when you were talking to Dan and those guys.
What did I say?
Well, I think you guys were all sort of agreeing that if you go off model with Hellboy, like if you stray too far from the Mignola version of Hellboy, it doesn't
falls
work.
apart, right?
And Corben was very strictly Mignola with the way that he treated the proportions and the way that he treated the facial expression.
For the most part, there's differences. He could look at the thick wrist. Yeah. Look at the deadlift legs, man. You wish you could deadlift that? Yeah, Hellboy. Yeah, get in that gym.
Look at that.
So if you look at because I had to study both these artists a lot before I did my book. Corben always has those fucking power lifter legs, dude. They're not like shredded, but they're just meat. Like they throw caber logs and shit. However, Mike Mignola thins his thighs a Hellboy a little bit. They're a little they're really segmented, if this were his leg, Mignola really kind of builds things like this. There's the knee, and he'd go like this, and then he'll come in and just draw a few lines that signify muscles, where Corben's, you can see, is more of this, like almost, again, he can deadlift, anything. It's hard to tell what I'm doing here. But so it's interesting.
Well, there's a panel in Macoma where Hellboy grows. He's like 50 feet tall, and he's walking through the desert.
Yeah,
and there's Corben chooses a very low angle. His thighs could crush you.
Yeah, he just has those. His characters aren't built for sprinting. They're built for lifting heavy objects, putting them back down, and making noise while doing it. And again, that's the beauty of art. I wouldn't think a thick, heavy-handed kind of, a quiet construction type of artist with stippling would have ever done it for me. But it just goes to show anything done brilliantly can be wonderful.
I can't emphasize how excited I was when I saw Corben's first Hellboy book. It was just, to me, it was a marriage made in heaven. It was just absolutely perfect.
Well, it lit people up. and that's probably why it won all the awards.
It did, right? It won an Eisner, right? One of them.
Yeah, that was shoved up my butt when I was selected for doing this, or when Mike Mignola announced it. I learned about the agency of people's ownership over a character. No, I probably learned that on Aliens, but there's a lot of positivity. Oddly, I was not ready for people letting me fill the shoes of these two monsters. However, there were a lot of people that were also standoffish about me even attempting to draw Richard Corben, and I don't even know where the hell I'm going because I'm trying to pay attention to Richard Corben. But
he's a bit of a sacred cow in the industry.
Yeah, I got a weird mix because Hellboy fans, oddly enough, and I can say I've worked on a lot of IP, some of the healthiest, nicest fan base, most respectful. Usually, and you're not gonna like this, they're of a little higher intellectual ilk in the sense that you can have smart conversations with them, not just hey, remember in Green Lantern 84 when you drew the power ring? It's not that type of stuff. There is that type of stuff. It's hard not being a fanboy or something this fun, you know?
Yeah.
But it was weird because he did get that agency from people where they're like, that's my favorite story. Don't fuck it up. I'm like,
oh, really?
You know, well, I'm going to do my best there, fuckface.
Well,
so it was interesting because usually you just get like you do Aliens and you're a piece of shit just for waking up in the morning. Star Wars, it's a mix, but a lot of dum-dums like Star Wars, and that's one of the problems.
What about Star Trek?
Star Trek usually smarter, but they're more socially retarded in the sense that they don't get social cues as well. But they could also probably build gadgets from the Enterprise. That's how smart they are, you know? So, fan bases are really interesting, man. There's some that are more annoying than others. Some you respect more than others, but they all seem to have their own flavor, which is kind of fun. But yeah, Hellboy fans, all in all, are, I would say, in general, are of a higher ilk. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of mouth breathers that like Hellboy because he punches monsters. I agree.
You know, I'm one of the administrators on the in the Hellboy in the Mignola group, and there's literally 20,000 members in that group, and we run these fan art Fridays every Friday where fans are allowed to draw any sort of Hellboy related stuff.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the stuff that there's one guy who creates his own Hellboy comic book every single week. And it's all like a comic strip, and it's always a dick joke. Every single week.
You've turned the corner. I'm back on his side again.
Yeah, he's great. He's you maybe know his name. His name is Waclaw.
I don't know. I don't know.
He's out of his mind, but every week he puts in he writes a comic strip about Hellboy, and there's always some sort of a nudity or a dick joke every single week.
There's heroes among us.
He's great, and sometimes one of the other moderators will be like, "Uh-oh, you think Waclaw went too far?" And they'll send me the thing. I'll say, just put it out there.
Yeah, the internet will tell you if you went too far.
It's fine. The biggest the biggest problem we have in that group is whenever a Nazi symbol shows up.
Lovely. Oh, you mean like just because he's punching Nazis, you got to deal with? There's literally a Nazi symbol on your website.
Seriously, there's a guy. The German fans are like begging us to stop posting pages with swastikas because they're going to get fired.
Yeah, because they got strict laws over there. I remember as a kid, you can't. I mean, the Pulitzer I will beat you with a baton type. I beat you under unconsciousness if you went walking around with a Nazi flag.
Let me entertain you with a few of the other crazy quotes that I pulled out of these old 1980s interviews with Corben. This shit, I can't believe the stuff that people used to talk about in interviews.
Yeah, there's just less filter.
So yeah, he says, occasionally my characters aren't intellectual. Usually when they resolve a situation, it's not through thinking, it's through some action. He then says, I admire people who are demonstrative sometimes. The time I felt I could kill somebody when my anger was a slow build, I stayed up all night dreaming, trying to figure out how I could go to New York, kill him, come back, and get away with it. I was even going so far as to try and figure out all the ways in which I could cover myself with alibis. Dude, you are being interviewed in a publication, and you're talking about fantasizing about murdering people.
Wow. I mean, we should have Freud interview him, right?
They just used to let it all hang out. I think it must have been like some French magazine or something.
Must have been, because that wasn't the Comics Journal.
No. Well, the Comics Journal, you know.
Well, they all have curse words. And I remember Frank Miller used to get a little brusque in there.
He did. I'm sure we could cancel Frank very quickly.
Unfortunately.
If we dug up some old interviews.
But that's about everybody back then, you know. Even if they were good people, I'm sure they said some shit that didn't go over well nowadays, man.
Well, none of it. I mean, like, you know, when and there was an interview where John Byrne was talking about Bob Layton's inks on that Hulk annual.
Yeah.
And he said that he showed the pages to his father, and that he complained that he said that all of Bob Layton's inks makes all of his characters look or something.
Oh, well, that's a common word when we were young, man.
It was a common word. And so I don't know what his friendship is with Bob Layton.
Yeah.
But Layton did add a certain sheen to everything, I have to admit.
Yeah, interesting adjective, descriptive there, but yeah, that's yeah, you probably don't want to use that in editorial, right?
No, I mean, but again, you have to remember the interview was in the 80s, you know, where people used to use that kind of language freely.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, the movies, you can watch literally any movies from the 80s and it's like, you aren't a homo, are you, bro? You know, and it's like, what? That was actually dialogue?
Oh, think about
it. Teen Wolf, it's like half racist and sexist and
terrible.
Yo, bro, you ain't no homo, is you?
It's terrible. But that was just, I mean, that was the Reagan era. You know,
that was definitely it. And that was, well, everybody, the last generation, they're fucking savages, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, what the fuck are you people doing? And, you know, and it's tough to realize they fought and clawed just to become that level of savage because their parents were fucking savages to them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're products of our upbringing. Oh. I got to close that door. There's mosquitoes coming in my office.
Goddamn skeeters.
But let me get a little deeper into this
yeah,
crazy.
Please do.
Here.
I'm gonna stipple while you enlighten. I'm curious. This is gonna sound gross, probably in the podcast. But how did you take it that this guy that you didn't? Because you said you didn't know me as an artist at all.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty clean intro to my work, at least on your end. How did you take the news, and then how receptive were you to me doing what Mike proposed in the story that I did? I'm curious.
Honestly, you're so good that it didn't even occur to me that there was some sort of sacrilege there. And I'm not
okay.
Not even to puff you up, but it's just like, you know, as I said, you know, Corben at this point in his career is sort of, it's almost a Severin riff. You know what I mean? It was really kind of downshifted Corben at this point. I think it's beautiful. The stories are beautiful and they're perfectly drawn, and and there's nothing against them, but and so I can understand why you were chosen in the sense that you're very textural in the way that you ink. You've got there are probably I can't think of another guy in the business who is as textural as you are. So it was a natural fit that way, but you've got the Mignola angle. He's a big influence on you, more so in the earlier stuff, I think.
Absolutely.
But I didn't have an issue with it whatsoever, and the end results were absolutely unbelievable. I mean,
now it feels like I'm was asking to get my dick stroked, so I apologize, everyone. But no, I had never asked you that before ever in my life. So
I didn't. I had no idea who you were. I saw you on a Drink and Draw, I think.
Yeah, you introduced yourself to me after that.
Yeah, I was like, I was like that. I was like, who the fuck is that? Because you were on with, Dan and Dave,
Jeff and Dave and Quesada.
And not only was I might have seen a preview or something ahead of time that caught my eye, but it's really hard these days, like to zero in on artists that you aren't already familiar with.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff out there. Your antenna has to be really up. And then, I noticed that there was going to be some good artwork coming up, but I didn't do a deep dive to figure out how good you really are. And then when I saw you on that episode, I was like, oh, this fucker's for real. I mean, you were describing what you were doing, why you were doing it, the different pens. And I was like, holy shit, that's just a panel of Hellboy smoking a cigarette, and I'm ready to buy the comic book.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, fans, for you had to watch JC hug my nuts there. But I was genuinely interested in how someone in your position, took that, because again, Corben's holy ground. Mignola is about as sacred and beloved as they come. And I had past demon I had to fucking conquer in this job. And so it's always interesting to know what smart people think. Oh. So if you find one, ask them.
I'm told that you absolutely crushed that series. But it's interesting. I mean, I think what you have in common with Corben is that the strength, your greatest strength is in the textures that you put on the page. That you both create very sumptuous textures.
Sumptuous, huh?
And like early Byrne, like of course his figures were all structurally sound, and he created a three-dimensional world and all of those other things that he was great at. But one of the really neat things about early Byrne is the way that he created really nice textures when he inked, and of course Terry gave him great textures too on the X-Men.
Yeah, beautiful pen line there.
Whereas a guy like Garcia Lopez or Golden or Dave Johnson, they're not very textual. The thing that attracts you to their artwork is the way that it's constructed. There's
definitely that's a good point. Like especially with like Dave Johnson, how he constructs his characters is a humongous part of the appeal of them.
Well, like Gil Kane is all construction.
Well, yeah, I will say that too. Well, I'll allow you to have that.
Yeah,
allow that into evidence.
Yeah. So, as a connoisseur of art, there are different things that different people bring to the table. Like Toth or Chris Samney, people like that. sometimes they can create things that are so perfectly simple that's the appeal.
Absolutely. The contrast alone makes you want to, digest it, devour it.
Yeah, and actually, and Samney drew the Black Widow series with Mark Waid, and it was the first issue of that was one of the best comic books of the last 20 years.
Awesome.
It was, I mean, it was. I was
I've
reading
never read it.
The ghost of Alex Toth had gotten into Chris Samney, and
cool.
It was like reading a really good James Bond film.
Awesome, man. I may have to pick that up then.
Oh yeah, I just got a piece of Samney art, of Black Widow Samney art. And,
cool.
It's pretty sweet. But so different, there's different artists that, everybody's, remember in those great old Marvel Universe things that they would list all of the powers of the character.
Yeah. I love that.
So like, if I were to break down comic book artists and you have to grade them on different things, and like sometimes you have Galactus and his strength would be listed as inhuman.
Yeah.
So you're texturally, if there's a texture grade, you're inhuman. You've reached the inhuman level. Like nobody's as good as you at that. And if you and Dave Johnson,
but I also max out neuroses too. So
that too, unfortunately, yeah, that actually subtracts from some of your other. But like Dave Johnson, he would get an inhuman grade for his structure.
And design skill. And
design skills. You get, Frank Miller is not, doesn't have Garcia Lopez's command of human anatomy, but he's the best pure storyteller ever born, probably.
Graphically, so it's arguable, right, man?
I think he's as pure ingenuity of a storyteller in creating. He created so much as a storyteller and added so much. I mean, as storytelling goes, he's probably my top guy.
He's definitely my favorite of all time because he's written and drawn a few things that literally altered the course of my life. And you can't say that about many people you meet or just that are involved in your life, even superficially like that.
But his score on texture would be like Aunt May. He's like he doesn't even rate a 1 on that stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas Wrightson's probably inhuman on that on what you do. You know what I mean?
Well, I got a little ways to go before we get to that comparison, but.
Well, you're both in that space. You know what I mean?
Yes, we apply, I think, the same amount of storytelling integrity to it, the same emphasis, or similar enough.
Yeah, I mean, so and like Gil Kane, structurally superhuman, very high level. But there was no. I mean, he inked with a felt tip marker. Nothing wrong with that. You can ink with whatever you want. But that deadline, and it was occasionally it was appealing. But after,
I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, when you paired him with like, was it Nestor Redondo who used to ink him, or Nebres? It was Rudy.
Yeah.
When Rudy inked him, boy, that you really had something. Because Rudy could, handle a brush like nobody else.
That's for certain.
There was,
really interesting. I'm enjoying you waxing on about this. Carry on, man.
Oh, I'm far from done. Rudy inked Dave Cockrum on John Carter of Mars.
Yeah.
And it was the best that Cockrum has ever looked, in my opinion.
Well, I could see that because Cockrum is a big shape heavy brush line. So if it isn't pulled off well, it's probably stiff as fuck.
Right.
Just really heavy-handed and stiff.
And Nebry's was, I mean, if you see these pages, I'll send them to you one of these days.
Yeah,
they're just gorgeous. I mean, it's the best Cockrum is. I mean, and I'm a Cockrum fan. I like him just fine. I mean, but when I was a kid, he just seemed quaint. After seeing Byrne and Paul Smith, it's like that Byrne, Paul Smith, and then I see Cockrum, and I'm like, oh, that's sort of quaint. It just doesn't. He's not using anything. He doesn't
have flair.
Doesn't do anything interesting texturally. He doesn't do anything minimalist the way Paul Smith did. It was very
just employed. It's employed for the story and nothing else. There's no.
Yeah.
And I've always been adverse to those styles. Nothing against Dave Cockrum, plenty talented, but it's just I don't know. I get bored.
Well, I appreciate him now more than as a kid.
I will agree with that. As a kid, I used to shit on him, and now I see the elegance and what he did and everything.
Well, with Nebry's, it was, and I said I was in one of the chat groups, the comic book chat groups, and I think I was chatting with Leafield, and you're going back and forth. And I said, if Cockrum had Nebry's on X-Men, that run would be held in the same esteem as the Byrne Austin stuff.
There's a possibility it would be interesting at the very least to know, what it would look like with that elegant brushwork.
It would have blown people's minds, dude. It would have blown people's minds if they'd seen
an argument there.
I mean, it's like, Marshall Rogers with Terry Austin is magic.
Yeah.
When those guys did Batman, when those guys did Doctor Strange, those were by far the best looking comic books on the shelf. Nothing looked that good.
You're probably right about that. So yeah, I guess you're right. I'll give it to you. Well done. You get to eat tonight, JC.
Oh, I've been dieting. I couldn't fit into my pants, so I'm eating half portions of everything.
I do. I get great. I get like down to like where I have a 4-pack, and I'm like, all right, and then I'll just have like a 2 pizza night, and then the next day I'll have ice cream. And then it's like I had a 4-pack for a day and a half. I don't know. I'm an idiot. Dieting sucks, man. I just want. Why can't I be 2 pizza Zach? Let me be 2 pizza Zach. If Corben can draw luscious dicks all day long, I can be 2 pizza Zach.
Did you ever read like those Den comics?
Not since I was a kid. In Hawaii, I'd like, hang out at the comic book / record store and read like all sorts of shit I'd never be exposed to normally. And that was one of them, if I remember correctly. So I knew of it and I knew the artist because I remembered Corben, but there's all sorts of nutty shit, but it always devolved into finding the issues of Cherry, and then me and my buddy looking at in the theme of the Mighty Corben.
That's right.
Nice. What did you call them? Nice what?
BJTs.
There you go, everyone.
My brother and I in the 80s, we were at like Stop and Price Chopper. It was Price Chopper. We were with my dad, the late Don Washburn, and he came up behind us. We were looking at Playboy or something, and we were just 10 years old or something, 10, 11 years old. And he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We're looking at the magazines." And he shook his head as he said, "It's just ink on paper, guys. That's just ink on paper. That's not real." I was like, "Yeah, that's actually pretty astute."
Yes, they also at the shop. That's where I got my heavy metal magazine. All the like nudie mags used to be up top.
Yeah,
to where they didn't have like things covering them. It's just like the the wooden board that is part of the shelf that kind of holds up magazines is the only thing.
Yeah.
So every once in a while you get like a nip slip up there or something.
Yeah.
And, you'd be up there buying candy for 45 minutes. Just like kind of.
There's a whole generation of kids out there who have no idea what we're talking about. They're like, people.
You had to find, one of your friends would have to find porn in the woods.
Yeah, right.
Or a dumpster.
Exactly. We did. Like, there was a big recycling shed over at the college where all the kids used to hang out. And, in between all the National Geographics and People magazine and stuff, occasionally you get lucky and find something like that in the
there'd be some friend that would find something, and then you'd what we would do it like before. This is back when I used to be going to school on base, in the military, and we'd like, you're outside the school before class, and some kid comes running up hurriedly, and everybody's like ripping out a page, so everybody gets a page of the porn magazine, and then that's your personal page. Don't lose it.
Oh my God.
Be responsible for your porn.
My stepbrother used to just cut out the genitals, and he had like a little like an Altoids container out in the shed. And he would open it up and like out of context, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I was like, "What is?" It didn't make any sense. But
it's kids nowadays are like 8 and they have their favorite free porn site.
I know.
And it's like back
in the day we had
playing with GI Joes. I had no clue. The best you got was Tarzan on HBO when we were a kid. What were her? Who is the hottie du jour? The blonde lady, Bo Derek.
Yeah,
you got to see Bo Derek's boobs through like a white shirt.
Oh,
and I got yelled at. My sister told on me because we were all playing out in the front yard, and I kept going back running into the house to see Bo Derek coming out of the water after Tarzan like karate chopped a boa constrictor or something.
Oh, I must have been like 10, 11 years old, and we had like a club there. We lived up in upstate New York, and there were a lot of barns, and so we created like a clubhouse in the barn, and it was really cool. I mean, it had like corridors.
So you had like a legitimate R gang type. Kick ass, brother!
Oh, it was awesome, and so but. To be a member of the club, you had to sign a contract, and
like a little kid contract.
It was just like
was there a little kid lawyer that would arbitrate disputes?
Yes, his name was Benji. And so they're like Washburn. They're like, if you want to be in the club, it's in writing. It says, I, Justin Washburn, agree to procure at least one, and then in parentheses the number 1. Hustler or Playboy magazine, and a certain, and a couple of like cap guns, I can't remember whatever else.
Dude, this is like A+. This is awesome, man. You're a little kid gang.
So I'm like, yes, I'm in the game. I had already had the money that I had stolen from the donation box, so I had the money to get the magazines and stuff.
Well, you do come from a family of fine horse thieves, right?
Oh yeah, we don't have to steal horses. So I forget that the contract is in my pocket, and my mom's doing my laundry, and she's like this feminist, she's a 70s feminist hippie. Yeah. She finds this contract in my pocket that says, I, Justin Washburn, agree to procure, a Playboy magazine and 3 cap guns for the gang. And she gave me the talking to. She's like, women are not objects. I don't understand anything she's trying to explain to me. I'm just embarrassed.
Yeah, it's just little kid.
I don't care about the magazine. I just want to be part of the club. And she's giving me, the Gertrude Stein, Ms. Magazine.
Women's suffrage. Oh, wow, dude. That's great. Luckily, I never got caught with porn. All my buddies always had like I didn't have an older brother, but all my buddies did. And if you got another older brother, there was always porn laying around,
It's huge.
So,
yeah. or we had local dads who were actually had pretty good collections.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my parents don't listen to this. Who gives a shit? In Germany, all he had were VHSs. And it was when VHS was first kind of hot, where like everybody had them in their home, and you'd record 3 movies on one VHS.
Yep.
It's some butthole dog shit resolution,
Yep.
and eat every second of it up. Well, in Germany, they only had one television station, AFN, Armed Forces Network. So you just got like the Soul Train, black and white Popeyes cartoons, and affirmative military action type stuff, like conserve energy and whatever. It was go vote.
Yeah.
It was a pretty shitty station. You got one show. So if the last year's Cosby Show was on, that was it. And and then it would be like Alf or some fucking shit. It was just, and then all of a sudden you'd hear the train and go, the Soul Train. It'd be like 4 p.m. You're a kid, you don't know what you're watching. So anyways, you watched a lot of movies on VHS, and it was during the heyday of piracy, and there'd always be some cat on base, some, sergeant degenerate, that had a pipeline to all the movies. So he would you could pay this guy to put 3 movies on a VHS for, say, like $10 or something like that. And my dad would have me pick 3 out, and it'd be like, that's how I got Conan, Ghostbusters, and Karate Kid or something. Revenge of the Nerds. Like, all the movies I had in Germany I've memorized. And there's like 50 of them. So 80s movies I've memorized. Anyways, my dad would make me leave, and I never understood why. And one day I was outside after I left, and I turned around, looked in the window, and what the guy also did was put like 3 porno movies on for the dads. And that's the first time I ever, because I didn't know what it was, so I was obsessed finding out what the fuck did my dad get. I was like 10 years old, and then one day I found it, and that was my exposure into videos. So yeah. I think my parents knew I found out, because then never again was there ever porn in the house, ever again.
Oh, that's criminal.
It is. So I had to rely on my friends. So if everybody wants to know why I'm so fucked up, it's I didn't have the normal amount of porn growing up. I was porn deficient.
Oh, man. I mean, we had HBO. So
even in Germany, I didn't have that, man.
Oh.
So I did see sometimes we used to bike all over in our little BMXs all over the Black Forest in Germany, and every once in a while you'd come to like some like more rural type neighborhood, and one day not the first boobs I ever saw, but one of the first pairs of like up close boobs I ever saw. We came around the corner, and there was middle-aged mom mowing the lawn with no shirt on. He's just flapjacks just swinging and it was one of those push mowers, that like, like the blades going back and forth. And she had these grandma, like mom things going, milk maiden things. I don't know.
Flapjack.
Yeah, all you kids, you had no clue what we did to find nudity.
Yeah.
Generation before us had the Sears catalog. We had to find our own Sears catalog, didn't we, JC?
And we got busted for it.
Yeah, you would catch brimstone if they caught you. Imagine being caught with porn at church or something back then. Right. No, you'd be beaten. Literally beaten.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's it was a whole different world. I mean, now it's like you can't even. It's on every single phone in every single person's pocket.
Can't even get away from it.
No.
I'll look for sources on my computer for I remember when Google Images was first a thing. Like it first came out, Don Kramer, the famous DC artist, he told me, dude, you got to check this out for sources. He's like, just type in whatever you want. It was the first time I'd ever heard of Google Images.
Yeah.
And we're looking it up, and I was drawing Richard Dragon for DC, i.e. Dick Dragon. and there's a scene that it's a Asian decor bedroom. So I just I type in Asian bedroom. I didn't see any decor. But yeah, that's the first time I realized that about 98% of the internet is pornography, right?
People.
I'm sure there's a picture of my butthole on it that I didn't even know was taken.
Well, there
has to be. I don't want to live in a world without my butthole on the internet, JC.
Well, in people forget, like, if there were, like, if you lived in Boston, I lived in Cambridge, even, 15, 20 years ago, they had magazine shops, like, in the middle of downtown. Yeah. And my buddy
Newsstand with that actually just had magazine and newspapers and stuff.
Yeah, and they had entire sections of weird, whatever.
Logging Monthly.
There'd be a magazine called Ebony Humpers. Like there was.
No.
It was just like the weird.
Well, there was. It'd be like over 40, and it would be like. I remember I was on a road trip. My buddy, shout out Dan Brown. He went into the gas station, like, get some Gatorades and something for us to look at. He comes back out with like 2 Gatorades, like some hot tamales, and over 40 magazine or something. I was like, my God. Great magazine. I fully support it. Check it out.
It's kind of hard to believe that there's even any periodicals left. I mean, like, I was excited today to see our friend and a friend of the show, Dan Panosian, has got a series coming out from Comixology, and the way they're doing it is they're gonna release them all on Comixology, and then at the end they're gonna collect them as a graphic novel.
Yeah, so much smarter. Kind of what I've been doing anyways for Kickstarter. Promote your book. Well, that's kind of the model anyways. You promote your book with the floppies, you try to break even, and then you make money on the collections. And that's how I came to learn it. But this kind of bypasses that. It's definitely the future. So
I guess so. I mean, I live in the boonies. That's how I have to get my comics now. I get my comics on Comixology.
I'm rereading. I reread shit I like. I'm that guy. Like, I'm redoing Lone Wolf and Cub. And I'm enjoying that. And everybody's like, oh, the new whatever. And I'm like, yeah. I like it. I enjoy old shit, man. I'd rather reread Arzak again and not give a shit what's happening and just watch the majesty that was Mobius than try and get into something new.
Well, I did pick up the Barry Windsor Smith 300 pager.
Oh, the monster.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good one, right?
I got to put that in the bathroom so I can get it read.
Yeah, that's a beast, especially with his density, because you got to absorb it. You can't just breeze through a Barry Windsor Smith. I think it's a crime against nature, actually.
It's just, there's so much about. I just have. If I put it in the right place, I'll read it, and that usually tends to be the bathroom, which is a place of honor, quite frankly, in my house.
Hey, if you're, I would love to be next to a person's toilet. That means you got to read it slowly and you're enjoying it. And you don't put something in the bathroom that you have to read. You put things in the bathroom that are gonna relax you and you enjoy, and
leisurely. You're gonna spend a little time, and there's nobody's gonna bug you. My buddy got busted. His wife smashed down the door because he was looking at porn. He had to look at porn. He had to lock himself.
Always back to porn.
To look at porn. And his wife was busted. And I told her to cut it out. She goes, I broke that door down because I knew what he was doing in there with that laptop. I'm like, leave him alone.
Poor guy.
For the love of God, you've got a half dozen kids. Give the man a moment to himself.
Yeah, let him enjoy the day or evening, or just disconnect for a moment, right?
Yeah. And for me, that's Barry Windsor Smith. Hey,
full circle. Back to giant swinging appendages. from that artist draw, Corben. I think I'm about done with my Corben here.
Dude.
I'll add a little splatter and stuff like that. But I tried to go a little sloppier with my stippling because when I had to study him in that Hellboy, he was already kind of loose, more implying the stippling rather than doing that gorgeous, perfect stippling that he did. So, if people are wondering,
you
jerks.
You crushed it. That looks. I just enlarged that. I've been looking at it small, but now as I look at it up close,
I'll obviously post it. I may gray tone it actually.
Yes, dude.
I'll do that after. I'll add a signature. Gray toning, it'll open up the background. What I can do there, cast a shadow or something. So yeah, let's everyone go buy Corben books. My personal favorite of his post I guess European and heavy metal flair or phase was the book The Hulk he did with Azzarello. One of my absolute favorites. I haven't read it in a while, but I still look at it. So there. Well, full disclosure, and you're welcome for all the porn stories.
There's going to be some heavy editing this week.
Leave it all in. Fuck it. Fuck you.
Fuck it.
Fuck you.
That's a great piece, dude.
So, yeah. So, hey, everyone, I love you. JC, thanks for doing this. We're going to have a guest next episode. We can say it's hot to trot guest. As JC wrote me, he said, dude, this is hot to trot.
It is hot to trot, just like the Tuscadero twins.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Love you all. Corben!